All right. Okay. So, now my previous live stream was basic comedy. Now, this video is going to have some comedic aspects to it, where I'm going to say LOL quite a few times, because there are fantasies of foreigners owning land in the Philippines. LOL. Let me explain this to you, what I'm going to do here. I'm going to break it down from my understanding of what you can and cannot do as a foreigner in regards to owning and or purchasing land in the Philippines. There have been topics, or there have been videos on this topic ad nauseum. Some of them are pretty close to the truth. Some of them are the truth. Some of them are completely based on falsehoods. Having rented property here in the Philippines, I went through basically every scenario possible in regards to owning land as a foreigner. Now, some people would say there are no options to own land in the Philippines, and I would beg to differ with you. There are thought processes or supposedly legal methods to own land as a foreigner in the Philippines, which, when you do the research, those methods are available, but they're not sound business practice, let's say. Let's just say they're a lot less than above board and much more below board when it comes to the reality of owning land as a foreigner in the Philippines. So let's discuss the first thing that pretty much is a standard rule. And if you're not a citizen born here in the Philippines, you can't own physical land or dirt in the Philippines. Now, if you are a Filipino or Filipino, then you can purchase land whether or not you live in the Philippines or it's your home country at the time. You can purchase land. So the biggest misconception about foreigners being able to buy land and control the dirt or land that they bought is the corporation fallacy. And it goes pretty much close to the lines that I'm going to draw out for you. As a foreigner, there has been stories, and they are stories, of people forming corporations. Sometimes, well, the number that I hear mostly is a 10-person corporation, whereas the foreigner is the corporate executive and owns 20% of the corporation. And the other 9 people in the corporation own a lesser percentage than 20%, however it works out. There could be 6 people and the foreigner owns 20%, and 5 people own the balance percentage points. That is possible to make that corporation. You'd have to go to a corporate lawyer, and typically what I have discovered about lawyers in the Philippines is that they're not much different than lawyers in America. They will do anything to get you to give them money to create a contract for you, and whether or not that contract is valid at the end of the day, they have absolutely no remorse whatsoever to write something up for you that is totally worthless. But they will charge you for it, and they have, look at my hand. See, there's a big 0 in this hand and a big 0 in this hand. The lawyers that write up these contracts have 0 liability when it comes to the contract being broken and you losing not only your investment, but But the possibility exists that you can go to jail in the Philippines for doing something that goes against the basic premise of Philippines law. So how those 10-person corporations work and how they can be, how that corporation and or entity, because a corporation is an entity, how that entity can be disbanded for any of the following reasons is in fact factual. So you want to buy land and you get the advice from a lawyer or somebody that did this before, that this, you can form a 10-person corporation and you'll own 20%. So you'll be the strongest factor in the corporation. So what that means is if you decide to sell the corporation at some point, you would have more of a say-so over the deal than the rest of the partners. Okay, so you make this corporation. Now, typically what a lawyer charges you to make this corporation is a lot of money. For a regular lease agreement, Daisy and I went to 5, 6, 7 lawyers. They all wanted 24 months of the amount of rent. So take the rent, we're just going to say the rent was $100 a month. The lawyers want $1,000, $2,400 is 120,000 pesos to make, and there's no guarantee that they won't throw something in the contract that allows the lessor or the person you're renting the property from, gives them an option to throw you off the property at any time in the near future. And they know this to be true, and they put it in the contract anyway. So what I am saying is that a Filipino lawyer or Filipino lawyer will have no qualms whatsoever to charge you $2,400 for a contract and throw a clause in the contract that the lessor can evict you from the property at any time. So here's how a lease agreement works here. Typically, you rent the property and you pay 24 months rent advance. In my case, it was 288,000 pesos, and that's what you pay for. That's what I would have paid for 24 months, and then you don't pay rent for 2 years. So in September of 2018, I didn't have to pay rent again until September of 2018. At which point, on the 18th, my lawyer did was he put clause number 21 in. He knew what he was doing. So I brought 9 people to the closing for the contract, and I wrote the contract. I used one of my lease agreements that I had in America, which was pretty sound. I modified it for the Philippines, and then I added some things like that the family would agree to this lease agreement upon the demise of the lessor, because the lessor can pass, and then they would take control of the property. So I had to put modifications in the lease agreement. So the first lease agreement that I wrote took me several days to conform to what I think possible to make unbreakable for myself. So YouTube disconnected me. Unbreakable for myself. YouTube disconnected me. Now I'm back. And I don't know if I'm talking to a dead air. So I'll look at my tablet. So what I did was I made the lease agreement pretty much binding for both parties. So I picked up everybody in the morning, and we went to the city, and that took a few hours to pick everybody up at their individual houses. And we got to the city, and the lawyer was, of course, he was late, a few minutes, but still, I called him. I texted him saying that I was going to be there. I don't know how close he lived to his office, but he was late. So he got there, and I gave him the final draft of my lease. So the one of the lessor has 3 children that are involved, and 2 of them have spouses, but only one of the spouses came to the signing of the lease, and that was agreeable. So the one spouse that came to the signing of the lease is a legal secretary, and that was good because she got to read the contract and she got to review the contract to see that the contract was fair. So during the process of her viewing the contract, she had a few minor changes that the lawyer was charging me. I don't know. I think it was 1,300 pesos an hour. I really don't remember. There was a lot of confusion that day. I'll tell you what the end result was. From 5,000 pesos to write the contract and have everybody sign it, it went to 13,000 pesos. So it doubled and then half again. So it went up 150% from the original quote because of the spouse of one of the children modifying the contract. And the modifications were within reason. There was nothing, it was just a few simple words that the lawyer secretary had to rework the contract. So the first time they did that, however much time it took, everybody was laughing, and it was still before lunchtime and joking around because we all knew each other for several years before that. It wasn't a new person that I had met. So we got the contract amended at the office, and then we both read it. And the woman, who was the legal secretary, decided that there was something else that she wanted to add to the contract, and we did. I agreed to it. It wasn't a big deal. So the lawyer, on the second occasion that we modified the contract, he put in clause number 21. Now that cost me a lot of money and a lot of aggravation and a lot of angst. Okay, so all the amendments for the first from the woman were agreeable. Now I don't know how or why the lawyer put in item 21. But let's go over what item 21 was and what it could do. So now I have the monies to give the landlord. That's in the bank. The money for that money should be transferred from one bank account to another. This way it makes it recordable. So that's how we did that. There was like a 10,000 peso, $200 good faith monies given towards the 288,000 pesos, and then I had to give my landlord 277,000 pesos within 3 business days. No problem. Okay. Now, at this point in time, it's way after 1 o'clock. We didn't have lunch. I got up at 5:30 in the morning to prepare whatever I had to do, and I was tired, and I'll admit I made a mistake. So he puts in this item 21 that said, the first part of item 21, I'm not going to read it. I'm not going to get the lease agreement out and read it because I have a good recollection, considering it cost me 8,000 pesos, $190 to modify that. But there was additional fees of like 1,500 pesos to do something else at a different lawyer's office. So it cost me 10,000 pesos. It's almost a month's rent. Okay, so item 21 said that the leasee, being Michael Fazio, has the right to end the lease agreement by giving the lessor, a 60-day notice that he is backing out of the contract, and there will be no penalties for that. In other words, I wouldn't have to pay the full 20-year lease agreement price to the lessor. I could just back out of the contract. So for whatever reason, I find another piece of property. If I wanted to buy a piece of property and put it under Daisy's name, these were the excuses he gave me for that. He said you could do that. So I said, that sounds reasonable. But there was a part B of item 21. The part B was the lessor also has this ability to back out of the contract by giving Michael Fazio, the leasee, a 60-day notice. Now, I actually don't believe that the legal secretary had him put that into the contract. I mean, I know these people for several years. I will not, under any circumstances, imply that this legal secretary put this in the contract. I think the lawyer did it to give the Filipino family and their offspring an advantage at any time in the future. That this option didn't have a beginning and ending period. It wasn't like they could do this within the first 6 months. This was in the contract. So let's just say I rented the property, which I did, and then I went out and rented equipment to dig the holes for the foundations and the water tank and the septic tanks, which I did, and then go out and get building supplies, which I did. Let's just say I did that. Well, and the landlord decided they wanted to have the property back for their family. For whatever reason, they want to put a bamboo hut on it. Doesn't matter what the reason is. They can give me 60-day notice. And if I had paid them rent for 288,000 pesos advance rent, and I had paid them for another 2 or 3 years, they say, well, we need the property back. I'd have to vacate the property and move my equipment, my tools, and my, whatever I owned on the property, off the property, and any structures that I built on the property would remain the property of the landlord. I couldn't take anything with me that wasn't personal. Like I could take my computer, I could take my sheets, my linens, I could take my blender, but I couldn't take any structure I built on the property off the property. That was in the clause. So what that meant was the lawyer put this clause in, and when I read it, by this time it was 2:00 because we went over the amendments in the contract that which we have all agreed to. Several members of the family had to discuss what the amendments were with the legal secretary, the woman who was a legal secretary and part of the family. So I was tired, and I said to the lawyer, what does this mean? He goes, oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. He goes, that's only if you decide that you want to back out of the contract. That was part A, but we didn't actually discuss that they could back out of the contract because I was tired. I just missed it. Okay, I made a mistake, a very costly mistake, because I could have, if I was really wealthy, I could have built the hotel on the property and then gotten a 60 days vacate notice. I could have built the hotel and furnished it and put the plumbing in and bed sheets and linen and all that other stuff. And then I would get a 60-day vacate notice from the landlord or their heirs, and I would have to leave the hotel, and they would not be responsible to give me any monies that I invested into the property. So at that point, which I noticed last probably September, I think it was September, when I met with some people that I read the contract in like September, and I made arrangements to meet some people that knew a little bit more about rental law than I did. By that time it was November, and I was getting ready to go to New York. So this is September of 2018. I stopped doing work on the property. I stopped buying plumbing fixtures and pipes and fittings and glues and stuff. I stopped. So when they read the contract, because I sent them a copy of the contract email, of course, and they said, we need to sit down and discuss this. So I went to their place of business, and they said, look, you're screwed here. You build anything on that property, and you can get a 60-day vacate notice, could be next week, Could be 5 years from now. Could be 10 years from now. You could build up the business, get a clientele, make a name for yourself, and they give you a 60-day vacate notice and you're gone in 60 days. So I asked them to have a corporate lawyer review it, who was a friend of theirs, and they did. And the corporate lawyer revised the contract with the amendment. That amendment was now gone. Item 21 did not exist anymore. I didn't put it in for me. I didn't put it in for them. So at this point, I was going, while nothing happened right away. It was a few weeks before I got to them. It was a few more weeks before they went to the corporate lawyer's office for whatever reason. And by this time, I was getting ready to go to America. I was in Cebu. I was busy setting Daisy up with a bank account and getting tickets for her mother to come in March to visit for 2 months so that I could spend some time on the water and get to get a little bit more, quality time with Daisy's mother. And I didn't get back until May, and on May about 10th, I got the contract back in its final form. Then it took a few weeks for the legal secretary to review the contract after I went to the office. So this stuff took a lot of time and a lot of angst, because I didn't know if they were going to agree to the amended contract, which they eventually did, and without much effort whatsoever on my behalf, they agreed to the amended contract, and we got rid of item 21. But my point here is that the lawyer, for whatever reason, and I'm going to stress, I don't think that the legal secretary had him put this in there. I think he did it as a favor to the Philippines community, that they could back out at any time. And if I invested 6, 7, 8 million pesos into the hotel, would have to walk away from my investment simply because I was a foreigner. Didn't have any problem with him. I did business with him before on a different issue. Didn't have an issue with him. Didn't have an argument with him about price from the previous issue. Just did it to benefit the Filipino family. Now that's part of the culture that you have to get used to. It's Filipino, Philippines family first, foreigner last. There's nothing in between. So that's why I think he did that. So by the time we reread the contract, and he convinced me that it was only me that would end up doing that, because the owner of the hotel, the owner of the property, would have no reason to evict me. I'm building a hotel. It didn't even click in my head that, what about after the hotel is done? I was tired. I was really tired. I got up at 5 o'clock. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a lot of talking, a lot of thinking. Okay, so that's one way that you can get screwed royally in the Philippines. Even though you have a contract, they can change a few words in the contract and it's null and void. And from my experience, it happened. So when it comes to those corporations, those dummy corporations where there are 10 Filipinos that here's how the 10 corporation investment contract works. You get 10 Filipinos. It doesn't matter who they are. It could be friends, if that was even possible here. It could be family of the girl you're dating, okay, which is very possible here. Could be people that own businesses in the Philippines, or it could be people that the lawyer suggests to you. So you are a 20% owner, but here is the kick. You're the 100% investor. These people are only investors by name. You're not going to find 8 other Filipinos that are going to invest 10 cents into your project. So you just put them on as a dummy corporation. There's absolutely no proof that they transferred money from their account into your account. which makes it a dummy corporation and illegal. So those 10-person corporations, you're the 20% owner. So if everything is going well and everybody is making money, and those corporations are not challenged, then everybody's happy. But let's just say you want to sell because of your age, or you want to move to a different island, and you want to sell the corporation and or the property, and they don't want to sell it. Well, that means you can't. And if you get into an argument with the other partners, fake partners who invested zero, not even 10 cents, and their name is on a 10-person corporation. Let's say you get into an argument with them. Or, worse yet, let's say just one of them wants to take 10% of the value of the corporation or the property invested, the store, the business, the land, whatever it is. Let's just say that just one of them wants money. And they'll tell you, they might come and tell you, look, I need, and they don't ask for small amounts of money. When you have big money invested into it, they might ask you for 10,000 US dollars. That's $500,000 pesos. To a Filipino or Filipina that has the average Filipina or Filipino in their lifetime, their entire net worth of their whole family, all 55 members of their family, their entire net worth of their family, from the average Filipina from the province, or even the average working Filipino, their net worth will not be 100,000 pesos or $2,000. They might pay 2,000 pesos a month for rent for 4 houses or 4 bamboo habitats on a piece of property. But the average Filipina or Filipino family is never going to have a net worth of $2,000. And that's all 55 members of the tribe. So let's just say he comes to you or she comes to you and says, look, I need money and I need 10,000 US dollars, which is 500,000 pesos, which is 5 times the potential possibility of them saving $2,000, which is never going to happen. And they want that money from you, and you say no. Well, here's what they can do to take your property and your investment away from you. They can go to the Philippines government and say, look, this contract we all agreed to it, but it's not legal. And it's not legal. And you now lose your share and or portion of your investment, which is, by the way, 100%. And the leftover Filipino members keep the property, and you go to jail, maybe. Okay, you're going to get prosecuted for writing up an illegal contract. It's not in the Philippines law that you can do this. So that scenario of you owning land or property in the Philippines, from everything that I have read, is not possible. So now, how can you own property as a member or of living in the community? Well, you can I'm going to go to my notes because I had it in order. Hold on a moment, and then I'll give it to you in order. The 10-person corporation is not legal, nor is it binding. What you can own is you can own a condominium. Now I have my viewpoints on condominiums. I call a condominium a roach hotel because there is no such thing as a major sized building anywhere in the world that doesn't have and is not infested with cockroaches. Now, what you don't know about cockroaches is that they spray sometimes an odorless chemical to kill the cockroaches, but you're breathing it too. Now, you know darn well that you can throw gasoline on a cockroach and it doesn't kill it. You can throw kerosene on a cockroach and it doesn't kill it. You can throw benzene on a cockroach and it doesn't kill it. You can feed it rat poison mixed in with the food on the floor and it doesn't kill it. I took a cockroach once in the bathroom of my house in Key Largo. I had a 5-gallon bucket. I was cleaning the tile. It had about 4 inches of water in it. And there was a big cockroach on the floor. And I put the bucket on top of the cockroach. And I left that bucket on top of the cockroach for months. I don't know how many months it was. It was 3, 4, 5 months. And I left that bucket opposite the toilet. When I wanted to clean, I put soapy water in and I cleaned the tile. But the cockroach couldn't get out from underneath the bucket. And do you know that 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it was later, that cockroach, when I picked up that bucket, he scampered out from underneath the bucket like he was the virgin birth, man. He just was going, skedaddling across the floor at his normal speed. That cockroach lived under a bucket with no way out, under the bottom of a 5-gallon bucket for months with no effect. Even though the floors were cleaned with the cleaning solution, or there was some of the solution went under the bucket, nothing kills cockroaches. So what they do is they spray a chemical in those condominiums, and each day, every breath you take, it destroys your lungs, your brain, your kidneys, your liver, and your heart, and your eyes. So if you want to own a condominium, you have to understand that your life expectancy is going to go down, not going up. So you can own a condominium under your name, and you can buy it under your name, and you can sell it under your name at a profit. That's not a problem. That's what you can own in the Philippines. Let's go to my... okay, if that's one way to own something. Another way to own something is long-term land rentals under a foreigner's name, including his nationality. That's what I did. So, as I discussed, I have a 20-year lease. I think I have 17 years left. I'm still going to build a hotel even with a 17-year lease. I'm not worried about my longevity. Okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to own a hotel, and probably going to be partially dive resort, and it's going to be for meeting people on YouTube and friends from America to come and visit, and it's going to be for family, for if I decide to have children, which I think I will. So that's, you can do a long-term rental under your name, put your nationality in it, and it gives you a passport number. All that information goes into the contract, and you own the rental agreement. In my rental agreement, I have amendments or addendums that say I can sell the rental agreement to a corporation or person of Filipino nationality, or sell it to a hotel chain if I wanted to, and at a pretty much big profit. So I have no wish, want, or desire to do that. But that's one thing I put in the clause. Now, I will tell you this. I won't give you my contract. However, if you want to make a donation to Patreon for $100, I will give you the contract and speak with you on the phone. Okay. Now, I'm not selling this. I'm going to give you the contract, and I'm going to tell you why. And I'll give you the other. I'll give you even the better contract. We only made the amendment for item 21. I'll give you both contracts, but it's going to cost you $100. It cost me $10,000 for the amendment, 13,000 pesos. I mean, 10,000 pesos, 13,000 pesos for the lawyer. So that's 25,000 pesos. It cost me 500 and countless days, hours, and emails back and forth. So if you want that contract, it's going to cost you money. And if you don't think it's worth money, then you come to the Philippines and you have a lawyer write you up the contract that I have, and it's going to cost you more than 25,000 pesos. That I can assure you, because this was 4 years ago. You can bet your bottom dollar that all prices in the Philippines doubled since then. And there's no guarantee that the lawyer won't put a clause in that you will get thrown off the property at some point in the future. There are a bunch of sneaky little fellows. All right, so let's go back to the notes. So you can own property in regards to rental property. And then once you rent the property, you can put a cargo container on the property, or you can build a little house on the property and own that. But that's as close to you owning property. Now, the agreement could be for 10 years, Could be for 20 years, it could be for 50 years, could be a 100-year lease agreement. Most people would try to get a 50-year lease agreement so their children and grandchildren could stay on the property. I'm not real concerned about that. The maximum rental agreement that they were willing to give me was 20 years. And at that point, if the hotel will have made enough money to make an investment in another property for the mother of my children. Now, another method that you can own property, but not own property. See, there's the cluster, the quagmire. You can own property, but not own property by putting the property under a Filipina or Filipino's name. However, that person there are no other options. There are higher options, but there are no lower options. That person becomes a 60% partner. Because by law, I need to get something to drink and I need to stir my sauce. By law, a 60% partner is the owner of the property and doesn't need your permission to sell the property or any investments that you made after you purchased the property and put it under their name. There is no reason for them to discuss selling the property with you. They can simply hold that thought. I need to stir the sauce. The sauce needs to be stirred. And I need, all right, it's getting a little bit hot in here too from this. Oh. Wow, this thing is hot over here. All right. All right. I'll get a little water, a little ice water, a little cold water, not ice water. I keep it in the top of the refrigerator. Okay, so as a 60% partner, the Filipina or Filipino person that you now own land with and or a house, you can buy a house and put it under the Filipino or Filipino's name. You can own that property with your name on the title or the deed. You can do that. But this is going to sound crazy to an American. I don't know how it works in England or Australia. This is going to sound like insanity. So you are, and again, you are 100% of the investment money. You are responsible because they have no money. Okay, I could walk up and down this block that I live on, and there isn't a single Filipino family, not one, that has 10,000 pesos in savings. I can go to the next barangay and ask them, not one. Now, unless they come from a rich family and their children went to school and they're professionals, there is no single Filipino family in the provinces that have 10,000 pesos. $200. You're investing 100,000 US dollars. So let's just say you have a girlfriend that you're going to get married to, or you got married and you have a wife, and you put the property under your wife's name. Now, this is a fact. What I'm about to tell you is a fact. It's not fiction, and you can confirm it to any one of a number of people on YouTube. It just sounds bizarro, but it's the truth. So you have a wife, a girlfriend, or a Filipino that you trust. For some strange reason, you trust them. Okay? Now that was a slight, if there ever was a slight. For some strange reason, you trust a Filipina or Filipino. You put it under their name, you get the property, you build the house. Let's just say you go minimal 100,000 US to build your building, 100,000, and it's done. And you have everything finished. You furnish it, all blah, 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 driveways, pool, whatever, jacuzzi. Well, let's just say your wife was, I don't know, her family needed money. Let's say your wife's family needed money. And the father got sick, he needed a heart operation, and he needs 1,000,000 pesos, $20,000. She might come to you and say, my father needs $20,000, and you might not have it. Or you might have it and say, look, your father's 85 years old. I'm not going to give you 1,000,000 pesos to keep your father alive for another year. Whatever the situation is, I wouldn't. Okay? Well, the girl, the friend, man or woman, Filipino, Filipina, they can just go and put the house up on the market without you even knowing it, or go to a real estate agent and say, look, my boyfriend, husband, friend invested 100,000 US dollars. They don't have to tell them the story that their father's sick, even if that might be true. 90% of the time, you don't know whether it's true or not. And 90% of the time, it's not true. They go to the real estate agent and say, look, this property has a value of, 100,000 invested, but it's worth 200,000 now. I want 50,000 US dollars for the property from anybody, from any investor anywhere in the world. And then the real estate agent goes to work and they'll find an investor. They'll buy it themselves, maybe. I've had real estate agents do that with my properties and in America. They'll buy it. So they'll find an investor and they'll sell to the investor, look, this property's worth $200,000. This is a fact. Show them the girl or the friend or the partner, whatever, will bring them in, take pictures, video of the property. This property's worth 200,000 US. You're married to a Filipino wife. You can buy this property for $60,000, and the real estate agent makes 10. The girl who you're married to, the man who you're married to, the Filipino, the friend, he gets 50,000 US dollars, which is 2.5 million pesos. Like I go back digressing, the average Filipino family is never going to have 10,000 peso savings. They could sell the property out from under you, and it gets worse just by going to a real estate agent to sell it. But it gets worse. Let's just say you build this big McMansion. You put it under your girlfriend, your wife, or your spouse's name, and she decides that she doesn't love you anymore. And she just says, please leave. That's it. You got to go. Gone. Gone in 60 seconds, gone in 60 days. It's up to her. Let's say you say, I don't want to leave. This is my property. She'll say, no, I'm the 60% partner. You have to leave. And then they get the police involved. The police will come and say, look, sir, you have to leave. And, be nice to your girlfriend or your wife, because she's going to determine how many days you can stay here and pack your stuff. That's the truth. So you think that you can own property in the Philippines. You can't. So that's another way that you can have your name. Now, if you have children with that woman and everything goes perfect for the rest of your natural life or whole life, your children become the benefactors of the property.